Part 2. Previously, a mafia boss's infant daughter refused to eat for 4 days. A young maid named Rosa discovered the milk was poisoned. A hidden traitor framed Luca's best friend, staged a murder, and revealed that Luca's late wife had been poisoned too, by the same hand. Moments ago, gunfire tore through the estate, and Sofia vanished from her crib. Luca Moretti had survived bullets, knives, 3 assassination attempts, a car bombing. He had watched men die without changing expression, but when he saw Sofia's empty crib, his knees almost gave way. Enzo entered. Luca turned. Find her. We will. Find my daughter. Every Moretti soldier in New York received the same order. Close the city. Airports were watched, train stations, bridges, docks. Police officers on Luca's payroll received photographs. Politicians were called. Rivals were threatened. For 6 hours, New York became smaller. Still, no Sofia. At midnight, Luca sat alone in the nursery. Rosa stood outside, hearing nothing, which frightened her more than shouting would have. She entered. Luca did not look up. You should leave. Rosa closed the door. Mr. Moretti, leave. Rosa approached. They'll find her. Luca laughed once. A terrible sound. You believe that? Yes. Why? Rosa had no answer. Luca looked at the empty crib. I promised Isabella. Rosa remained silent. The night she died, I promised her I would protect Sofia. His eyes filled with tears, and this time he did not hide them. And I couldn't protect either of them. Rosa sat beside him. You didn't know. I should have. How? I should have known. How? Luca looked at her. Rosa's voice was firmer. Tell me how you were supposed to know. Luca said nothing. Because you're Luca Moretti? His eyes hardened slightly. Rosa continued. Because everyone says you're powerful? Because men are afraid of you? Careful. No. Luca stared at her. Rosa's heart pounded, but she continued. You think being feared means you should know everything. It doesn't. You know nothing about me. I know you haven't slept in 4 days. Luca became quiet. I know you stand outside Sofia's room before entering, because you're trying to hide when you're afraid. Rosa's voice softened. And I know you keep Isabella's photograph facing the door, because you want her to be the first thing you see when you come home. Luca looked toward the photograph. Rosa continued. You loved them. Love didn't protect them. No. Rosa looked at him. But fear didn't either. Those words struck Luca harder than any bullet. For years he had built walls, armed men, locked gates, paid officials, secret routes, believing fear was protection. Yet Isabella had been poisoned inside his home, and Sofia inside her own nursery. The enemy had not broken through Luca's walls. The enemy had been invited inside. Luca stood. Everyone. Rosa frowned. What? Everyone has been looking outside. He walked toward the door. Airports, roads, docks. His expression changed. They never took Sofia off the property. Rosa stood. Luca opened the door. Enzo. The mansion was searched again. Every room, every closet, every tunnel. The Moretti estate covered 17 acres. The main mansion had been built in 1912, and Luca's grandfather had added hidden storage rooms during Prohibition. Most had been sealed. One had not. At 2:17 in the morning, Rosa heard crying beneath the east staircase. Everyone stopped. Rosa pressed her ear against the wall. She's here. Luca rushed forward. Where? Rosa listened. Another cry. Behind the wall. Marco found the mechanism, and a wooden panel opened onto dark stairs descending into the dark. Luca ran down, and Rosa followed. At the bottom was a small room. A woman sat in a chair, Sofia in her arms. Luca raised his gun, then froze. Dark hair streaked with gray. About 55. Italian. Luca knew her. Mrs. DeLuca? Rosa stopped. The housekeeper smiled sadly. For 27 years, Maria DeLuca had served the Moretti family. She had cooked for Luca when he was a child, cleaned his wounds after his first street fight, helped Isabella choose her wedding dress, held Sofia the day she was born, and now she sat in a hidden room, holding the kidnapped baby. Luca's hand shook. Give me my daughter. Mrs. DeLuca kissed Sofia's forehead. She has Isabella's eyes. Give her to me. You never noticed. Maria, all these years, her eyes filled with tears. You never noticed anything. Luca stepped forward. Mrs. DeLuca raised a small syringe, its needle touching Sophia's neck. Luca stopped. Rosa gasped. Put the gun down. Luca lowered it. On the floor. He obeyed. Something Rosa had never seen Luca Moretti do for anyone. Mrs. DeLuca looked at Rosa. And you? Rosa froze. Come here. No. The needle pressed closer to Sophia's skin, and Rosa walked forward. Maria, Luca said, this is between us. Mrs. DeLuca laughed. No, it isn't. She looked at Rosa. This girl ruined everything. Rosa stared at her. You poisoned the milk. Yes. Why? Mrs. DeLuca looked at Luca. Ask his father. Luca's expression changed. My father is dead. Good. The hatred in her voice filled the room. Maria. Your father killed my husband. Luca stared. Vittorio DeLuca worked for him, loyal for 18 years. Then one shipment disappeared. Luca remembered the story. He had been 11. His father, Antonio Moretti, believed Vittorio had stolen $200,000. Vittorio disappeared, and everyone knew what that meant. My father believed. Your father was wrong. Sophia began crying. Mrs. DeLuca rocked her. He found the money 3 months later. One of his accountants had taken it. Luca's face changed. He knew. Yes. How do you know? Because your father came to me. Mrs. DeLuca's voice broke. He stood in my kitchen and told me there had been a mistake. Rosa covered her mouth. He offered me money. Mrs. DeLuca laughed through tears. Money for my husband's blood. So you stayed here. I stayed close. For 27 years? I waited. I waited for you to have something worth losing. The way I lost Vittorio. A wife, a child. Something that would make you understand what an apology is worth. Luca looked at Sophia. You killed Isabella. Mrs. DeLuca's eyes hardened. Yes. Luca moved. The syringe pressed into Sophia's skin. Don't. He stopped. Rosa looked at Mrs. DeLuca. Why Isabella? Because killing Luca would have been mercy. Luca closed his eyes. I wanted him to lose what I lost. Mrs. DeLuca looked at him. Someone you love. Leaving the world because a Moretti decided they should. Rosa's stomach turned. And Sophia? Mrs. DeLuca looked down at the baby. She was supposed to die slowly, the way grief does. Luca's face became empty. You made one mistake, Mrs. DeLuca continued. You hired her. He looked at Rosa. A maid. Rosa stared back. Just like me. Mrs. DeLuca smiled. I watched powerful men ignore servants my entire life. I built everything around that truth. The bitter milk, the false note, the button, Claire's death, Anthony, the hidden room. All of it had been planned by a woman everyone saw but no one noticed. Except another maid. You tasted the milk, Mrs. DeLuca said. Rosa nodded. Why? Because Sophia was hungry. That's all? Yes. Mrs. DeLuca laughed softly. 27 years of planning. Tears ran down her face. Destroyed because you tasted milk. Rosa looked at Sophia, crying harder now, and then she noticed something. Mrs. DeLuca's hand on the syringe was awkward, her thumb not quite on the plunger. Rosa remembered Claire had been left-handed, and so was Mrs. DeLuca, but she was holding the syringe in her right hand. Why? Rosa looked at Mrs. DeLuca's left wrist. A bruise. Fresh. Dark. Rope marks. Rosa's eyes widened, and Mrs. DeLuca saw her expression. Too late. Rosa whispered. You didn't take Sophia. Luca looked at her. What? Mrs. DeLuca's face changed. Rosa stepped closer. Someone tied you up. Stay back. Your wrist. Luca looked. Rope marks. Mrs. DeLuca raised the syringe. Rosa shook her head. You poisoned Isabella. Mrs. DeLuca said nothing. You poisoned Sophia. Silence. But you didn't kidnap her. Mrs. DeLuca's eyes filled with fear. Rosa. You were brought down here. Stop. By who? Mrs. DeLuca began crying. Stop asking questions. Rosa understood. The syringe was empty. Not a weapon at all. Mrs. DeLuca was terrified. Someone had placed her here with Sophia, wanting Luca to find her, wanting her to confess, because a confession would end the investigation. Rosa turned. Mr. Moretti. A gun clicked behind them. Enzo stood at the bottom of the stairs. Luca stared at him. Enzo held a pistol. Rosa. His voice was almost sad. You really don't know when to stop. Luca's face became still. Enzo. Enzo aimed at him. Move away from the girl. Luca did not move. 22 years. Enzo smiled. 22 years. Why? Because I was tired of standing behind you. Luca stared. Enzo stepped into the room. Your father gave you everything. Name, territory, men. My father gave me enemies. He gave you a throne. Enzo's voice sharpened. And I helped you keep it. Every year, every deal, every body, while you got the name on the door, and I got handle it. So this is about power. At first, Enzo looked at Mrs. DeLuca. Then Maria made it easy. Mrs. DeLuca spat at him. Enzo laughed. She hated your family. I needed someone willing to hurt it. Luca understood. You knew she killed Isabella. I helped her. Mrs. DeLuca looked at him. No. Enzo smiled. You thought you did it alone? Mrs. DeLuca stared. The hospital payment. Dr. Vance. Claire. Enzo shrugged. Me. Luca's voice was quiet. Claire knew. Claire saw Maria near the formula. So you killed her? Yes. And planted your own button. Enzo smiled. That was the clever part. Rosa understood. If Luca suspected you, you'd explain that someone was framing you. Enzo looked impressed. Exactly. And he would trust you more. Exactly. Luca stared at the man he had called brother. The sniper? A distraction. Anthony? Mine. Vance? Knew too much. And Sophia? Enzo's smile disappeared. Sophia was never supposed to survive. Luca moved. Enzo fired. The bullet hit Luca's shoulder. Rosa screamed. Luca fell. Sophia cried. Mrs. DeLuca dropped the empty syringe. Enzo aimed again. And Rosa did the only thing she could think of. She threw herself at him. Enzo fired. The bullet struck the wall. Rosa hit his arm. And they fell. Enzo was stronger. He threw her aside. And she crashed against a table. Enzo raised the gun toward Luca. But Mrs. DeLuca moved, placing herself between them. The gun fired. Mrs. DeLuca jerked, looked down, and saw blood spreading across her dress. Enzo stared, distracted for 1 second. Luca attacked, slamming Enzo into the wall. The gun fell. Enzo punched Luca's wounded shoulder, and Luca staggered. Enzo grabbed the weapon, but Rosa kicked it away. Enzo turned toward her. You stupid little. Luca hit him, and they fell together. 22 years of friendship ended on the floor of a hidden basement. No soldiers, no empire, no titles, just two men punching each other like the 16-year-old boys they had once been. Enzo reached for a broken chair leg. Rosa saw it. Luca. Too late. Enzo drove the wood into Luca's side. Luca gasped. Enzo stood, picked up the gun and aimed it at Luca. Then a small voice made a sound. Sophia. Not crying. Laughing. Everyone froze. Sophia was looking at Rosa, reaching toward her, and Enzo glanced at the child. Rosa moved. She grabbed the metal tray beside the table and struck Enzo's wrist. The gun fired into the ceiling. Luca tackled him, and the weapon slid across the floor. Mrs. DeLuca, bleeding badly, reached for it. Enzo saw her. No. Maria DeLuca picked up the gun with her left hand. Her real hand, the one that did not shake. Enzo stopped. Maria. She looked at Luca. I'm sorry about Isabella. Luca said nothing. Tears filled Maria's eyes. She was kind to me. Then she looked at Enzo. You used my grief. Enzo raised his hands. We can talk. Maria fired. Enzo fell. Silence. Maria dropped the gun. Rosa rushed to Sophia. Luca crawled toward his daughter. Maria leaned against the wall, blood covering the floor. Luca looked at her. Why did you save Sophia? Maria smiled weakly. I didn't. She looked at Rosa. She did. Maria closed her eyes and died before the ambulance arrived. 3 weeks later, the Moretti mansion was quiet. Not the frightened quiet of Sophia's 4th night without food, but a different quiet. Peaceful. The east staircase had been sealed. Claire was buried near her parents. Dr. Vance's family was placed under protection. Enzo Bellini's name was removed from every Moretti business. Luca survived. The bullet had passed through his shoulder. The wooden wound required surgery. The doctors ordered 6 weeks of rest, and Luca ignored them after 9 days. Sophia recovered faster. She gained weight. She laughed constantly. And she ate, though only if Rosa was somewhere nearby. One morning, Rosa entered Luca's study. He sat behind his desk, his arm in a sling. "You wanted to see me? Sit." Rosa sat. Luca placed an envelope on the desk. "What is that?" "Open it." Inside was a check. Rosa stared at the number, then looked again. "Mr. Moretti." "Yes. I think there's a mistake." "No. There are too many zeros. I know how many zeros I wrote." Rosa pushed the check back. "I can't take this." Luca frowned. "Why?" "Because I didn't save Sophia for money." "I know." "Then, you saved my daughter's life." Rosa looked at the check. "Twice," Luca added. "Maybe 3 times." Rosa smiled. "No." Luca leaned back. "People don't usually tell me no. I noticed." Luca almost laughed. Rosa stood. "Can I go?" "No." She sat again. Luca opened a drawer and removed a folder. "What is that?" "Your application." "My application for what?" "School." Rosa stared. Luca opened the folder. "New York University." Rosa stopped breathing. "I never applied." "I know." "You applied for me?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because apparently you enjoy doing jobs you're not qualified to do." Rosa frowned. Luca continued. "Medical observation, criminal investigation, handwriting analysis." Rosa laughed. "I clean rooms." "No." Luca's expression became serious. "You see people." Rosa became quiet. "I spoke to the dean." "You threatened the dean." "No." Rosa stared at him. Luca sighed. "Very little." "Mr. Moretti, he agreed to review your application. I can't afford university." Luca pointed toward the check. Rosa looked at it, then at him. "You planned this." "Yes." Rosa's eyes filled with tears, and she looked away. Luca pretended not to notice. "What would I study?" "That's your decision." Rosa thought about Sophia, the bottle, the crying, the doctors who had looked at test results, but failed to look at the child. "Maybe nursing." Luca nodded. "Maybe medicine." He nodded again. Rosa smiled. "Maybe detective work." "No." Rosa laughed. Luca smiled. Then Sophia cried upstairs, and both of them stood at once. Luca pointed. "Don't." Rosa walked toward the door. "She's hungry. I can feed my own daughter." "Of course." They reached the nursery together, still arguing quietly. "You don't believe me." "I believe you. You have that face." "What face?" "That face you make when you think I'm incompetent." Rosa smiled. "I would never." Sophia sat in her crib, and the moment she saw Rosa, she laughed. Luca stopped. Rosa picked her up. "Hello, little one." Sophia touched Rosa's face, and Luca watched them. 8 months earlier, Isabella had died. 4 weeks earlier, Luca believed his daughter would follow her. He had called doctors, spent money, threatened people, locked gates, mobilized an empire. None of it saved Sophia. A 19-year-old maid had walked into a kitchen, tasted 1 drop of milk, and asked the question no one else had thought to ask. What if the baby wasn't refusing to eat? What if she was trying to tell them something? Luca approached, and Sophia reached toward him. He hesitated, then picked her up, and the baby touched his cheek. Luca smiled. Rosa prepared a small bowl of mashed pear and handed him the spoon. Slowly. "I know. Small amounts." "Rosa, don't rush her. I raised an organization of 200 men." Rosa looked at him. "Can any of them eat with a spoon?" Luca stared. Rosa tried not to laugh, and Sophia laughed for her. Luca shook his head, then offered his daughter the spoon. Sophia opened her mouth and ate. Luca froze. Rosa smiled. Again. He offered another spoonful, and she ate that too. Something in Luca's face changed. A wall cracked, not completely. Perhaps men like Luca Moretti never truly escaped the walls they built. But sometimes one window was enough. He fed Sophia again, and again. Rosa walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" "Breakfast." Luca looked alarmed. "You're leaving?" "For 10 minutes." "What if she stops eating?" Rosa smiled. "Then listen to her." Luca looked at Sophia, who grabbed the spoon, pear covering her fingers, then her dress, then Luca's expensive shirt. Rosa laughed. Luca stared at the stain, and Sophia laughed harder. Slowly, Luca began laughing too. Rosa left them together. Years later, people would tell different versions of what happened inside the Moretti mansion. Some said Luca killed 11 men when his daughter was poisoned. False. Some said an entire rival family disappeared. Also false. Others claimed Sophia survived because Luca hired a secret doctor from Europe. Completely false. The truth was simpler, and perhaps that was why nobody believed it. A baby stopped eating. Powerful men searched for complicated answers, and one young maid looked at a hungry child and paid attention. Rosa Alvarez eventually left the Moretti mansion, but not immediately. She stayed through her first year of university, then her second. Luca paid every tuition bill. Rosa complained every semester. Luca ignored her every semester. She became a pediatric nurse, and years later she went back to school. At 34, Dr. Rosa Alvarez opened a small children's clinic in Brooklyn. Above the reception desk was a framed silver baby spoon. Patients often asked about it, and Rosa never told them the full story. She simply smiled and said, "It reminds me to listen." Sophia Moretti grew up. She never remembered the bitter bottles, the hidden basement, Maria De Luca, or Enzo Bellini. But she remembered Rosa. Her first clear childhood memory was sitting on a kitchen counter at 4 years old. While Rosa mashed a banana, Sophia attended Rosa's medical school graduation, sitting beside Luca in the front row, and when Rosa's name was called, Sophia screamed louder than anyone. Luca pretended he did not know her. And Luca changed, not overnight, because men like him rarely did, but his organization slowly became smaller, then quieter. Businesses became legitimate. Old territories were surrendered. Enemies were paid. By Sophia's 10th birthday, the Wolf of Brooklyn had become a man who spent more time arguing with school administrators than criminals. People assumed age had softened him. They were wrong. It was one night, one empty crib, one spoon, and a maid who had told him something he never forgot. Fear did not protect the people you loved. Attention did. On Sophia's 18th birthday, Luca gave her a small box. Inside was a silver button. Sophia looked confused. "What is this?" Luca sat across from her, Rosa beside them. "It's a story." "What story?" Luca looked at Rosa, who smiled. "The story of why you hate bottles." Sophia laughed. "I don't hate bottles." "You did." "When?" "When you were 8 months old." Sophia looked between them. "Wait, is this the story you two always refused to tell me?" Luca nodded. Sophia sat forward. Finally, Luca looked at Rosa. "You tell it." Rosa shook her head. "No, you. You tell stories better. You exaggerate less." Sophia sighed. "Someone tell me." Luca smiled, then began. "Once there was a very stubborn baby." Sophia rolled her eyes. "Papa, and an extremely intelligent father." Rosa coughed. Luca looked at her. "Do you want to tell it?" "No." "Then stop." Sophia laughed. Luca continued. "The baby refused to eat. And her father tried everything. Of course. Doctors, specialists." Rosa leaned toward Sophia. "He threatened them." "I did not threaten anyone." Rosa stared at him. Luca corrected himself. "Not seriously." Sophia laughed. "Then what happened?" Luca became quiet. He looked at Rosa, and 18 years disappeared for a moment. He saw a 19-year-old maid in a kitchen, a bowl of mashed banana, a starving baby opening her mouth, and hope returning to a room that had expected death. A maid noticed something. Sophia looked at Rosa. "What?" Luca smiled. "Something no one expected." Rosa looked at him, then at Sophia. "Your father wasn't listening." Luca frowned. "That's your version?" "It's the truth. I was listening. To doctors. They were doctors. And I was right." "You tasted baby formula from a refrigerator." "Exactly," Sophia laughed. Luca shook his head, but Rosa continued. "The truth is, Sophia, you saved yourself." Sophia's smile faded. "What do you mean? You kept screaming." Rosa touched her hand. "Everyone thought your crying was the problem." She smiled. "But you were trying to give us the answer." The room became quiet. Sophia looked at the silver button, then at her father. Luca nodded. "You were telling us something was wrong." "And Rosa listened?" Luca looked at the woman who had changed both their lives. "Yes." Sophia hugged Rosa. Luca looked away. Rosa saw his eyes. "Are you crying?" "No. Papa is crying." "I am not." Sophia laughed. "He is." Luca stood. "I'm leaving." Rosa smiled. "Sit down, Wolf of Brooklyn." Luca stared at her. No one else alive would have dared, and sat. Laughter filled the Moretti home, and Luca thought about all the people who had once feared him. Men who lowered their voices when he entered a room, politicians who answered his calls at midnight, criminals who crossed streets to avoid him. For years he had believed power meant being the person everyone noticed. Rosa had taught him the opposite, that sometimes the most important person in the room is the one nobody sees. The maid carrying towels, the nurse standing in the corner, the child who cannot speak. Because silence isn't always silence, and the person everyone is trying to quiet is sometimes the only one telling the truth. Sophia had been telling them for 4 days. The milk is wrong. Please listen. 23 employees missed it. 3 doctors missed it. A mafia boss with hundreds of men missed it. But Rosa tasted the milk, and everything changed. Because sometimes saving a life doesn't begin with a gun, or money, or power. Sometimes it begins with one person paying attention, and one tiny spoonful of mashed banana.